the ways to monetize webinars. And so tonight we're looking at what I call Facebook group profits. And that basically is how to use webinars to monetize your Facebook groups, to consistently generate profits within your Facebook groups without, having to do the pitching and selling and that sort of stuff. Then in module 2, which we're going to be going through next week, I'm going to really help you understand how to use webinars to generate profits promoting digital products, things like online courses, online programs, and things like that. I'm going to share with you how to use webinars to launch them. I'm going to show you how to use webinars to create them. And I'm also going to share with you how to use webinars to generate a lot of sales of your online digital products. So I'll be sharing that with you in module number 3. And then module 2 is about live events. I mean, live events are absolutely amazing. I love live events. I love being in a room with an audience. You as a speaker, you draw from the energy of your audience, whether it's a seminar or even if it's a training event. There's just something about having a live audience. Now, if you've tried to run a live event before, you will know it can be very challenging. And one of the biggest challenges, actually, among others, is getting people to actually register and pay to show up for your event. And I'm going to share with you, how I use webinars, and I'm going to break it down, the process. So it's not some hypothetical theory. It's very practical. The process of filling out your events using webinars. And then finally, in the 4th module, I'm going to be talking about high ticket profits using webinars. It's different. I'm going to say up front, it's very different from a lot of what is being taught out there. And some of that you will understand tonight when I'm going to explain to you why personally, some of what I'm going to be teaching is very contrarian. So you may have heard some gurus who suggest things which are not slightly, but very different to what I suggest. But I'm going to help you understand why I suggest this. And I want you to understand that this is drawing from over exactly 15 years of running webinars. I've hosted definitely in the thousands, more than a few hundred webinars, and I've learned a little bit about hosting webinars and how to use webinars, the different types of webinars, the different ways to use webinars, and how to use webinars to maximize profitability in your business. And I'm going to be drawing from that experience over the next 4 weeks and sharing this with you. So make sure every time you come prepared, you come looking to really get this, but looking to apply this in your business. So, so pay attention and be prepared and expect to get a lot out of this that you can use in your business. All right. Awesome. Great. Now, so the first thing is, why webinars? I hear people say things, which is understandable. Do we really need to use webinars and all that technology when you can just do Facebook Live? You can do Instagram Live, you can do YouTube Live, you can use all these platforms, and it's so easy to just, you already have the audience. Why don't you just go out there and use these platforms rather than, using webinars and all that other stuff? And I hear that again and again. I have people say, do people really attend webinars? Are webinars really worth it? Should we do it? And I'm going to basically give you some information based on the stats that I've gathered, and also to help you understand why webinars, without a shadow of a doubt, make a big difference in your business. Now, with a live video, with videos that are recorded, right? So with videos that are recorded. So if I record a video, and I'm going to give these are stats that I've gathered with videos that I've recorded and uploaded to the internet, I realized that on average, a viewer will watch 2 minutes of a recorded video. So if I sit in my office right now and I teach something and record the video and I upload it to the internet, on average, looking at my stats on Facebook and on YouTube, most people would watch about 2 minutes of that video. Right. So it doesn't matter how long the video is. If it's a 2 minute video, they'll probably watch the whole thing. If it's a 10 minute video, they'll probably watch 2 minutes. It's just the way it is. Right. Now, with Facebook Live, on the other hand, right, with Facebook Live, people tend to watch, this will surprise you, even less. Right. You would think with Facebook Live, people would watch more. No, what from my stats, with Facebook Live videos, you get more views, more people see your video, which is great. But that doesn't mean they stay on there for a long time. On average, they spend less than 2 minutes. So an average view with a Facebook Live video, mine, so I'm talking about myself, okay, is less than 2 minutes. So it basically means my video shows up on someone's timeline, or they get a notification DJ is hosting a Facebook Live, and they click to watch to kind of figure out what DJ is talking about. And they're on there for about a minute, and then they jump off to probably go keep browsing or to go do whatever else they were doing. So on average, they spend less than 2 minutes on my Facebook Live videos, and these are stats. Now, why is that the case, and why are those numbers ridiculously low like that, right? And the answer, and I'll tell you what, the answer is this: it's simply because there is a lot vying for people's attention right now. It's very, very difficult to get and keep people's attention. And so you can say, well, we've got to create better content. And that's true. You do need to create better content. And all these other things. We've got to create more content, which I'm not sure about that personally, right? I don't think it's the volume of content. I think it's the attention. Our challenge is getting and keeping people's attention long enough for us to make a very powerful impression. Now, let's look at my webinars on the other hand. Now, with live webinars, on average, please listen to this, on average, people stay for 54 minutes on my live webinars. People stay for 54 minutes on my live webinar. So if a person shows up for a live webinar, if they happen to show up, they would normally sit there and listen in and watch for 54 minutes. Okay. Now, what about webinar replays? For webinar replays, when I do offer webinar replays, on average, people stay for 8 minutes. Okay, so I just wanted to share those stats with you. So you kind of really, so with videos, it's 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes. With live video, like Facebook Live, it's a little under 2 minutes. With live webinars, it's a little under an hour. And with webinar replays, it's a little under 10 minutes. Now, why is this information that I just shared with you? Why are these stats really important for you and your business? Well, the reality is webinars still remain. Webinars still are up there. The only medium that enables you to make a powerful and really lasting impression than webinars right now is live events. So being in the room live with your audience, because if they're in the room, they're most likely going to sit through your presentation, right? And so if you're there for an hour or 2 hours, they're going to be there. And as long as what you're saying is good enough for them to sit there and stay all the way through, right? They're going to be there in the room with you live, engaging with the brilliance that you're sharing with them. Hey folks, yes. All right, I'm back. Now, I just want to check very, very quickly because, like I said, my computer for some reason wasn't going online. I'm using a completely different machine here in the office. It's not the one I plan to use. I don't use this particular computer for webinars, and it's the camera that keeps tripping off. But I want to know, when the camera tripped off, were you still hearing me? When the camera tripped off, were you still hearing me? Because if you were still hearing me and it trips off again, I will just keep talking. But if you weren't hearing me, then I do have a bigger problem. And unfortunately, my computer is still not going on the internet, so I can't swap. I can't swap. So if you can just let me know very quickly by just typing in the comment section, then I will continue. Right? Great stuff. Okay, good. So you couldn't hear. Okay, thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate. So if it happens again, just bear with me. I'm gonna have to refresh. It's this machine that I'm using, and there's nothing. I only have these two machines here. My main computer, for some reason, isn't going on the internet, and this other one has never really been the most reliable. Its camera. The camera just isn't as reliable. So there's little I can do about that. Let's just hope that it doesn't happen again. But if it does, just bear with me and stay on. And what I'll do is I'll just refresh and come back on. So we'll just use this makeshift approach, and we'll make it work. All right, brilliant, good. Now, so you can see there that our biggest challenge is getting people's attention and keeping their attention long enough to make a long and lasting impression. That is your biggest challenge right now. There's a bombardment of information. There's a bombardment. It's a very noisy marketplace. That's our reality. And people it's very difficult to get people to engage with your content long enough for you to make a long-lasting impression. And aside from being in a room with a person or being one-to-one with a person, the next best way to be able to make a long-lasting impression is to have an appointment online. So an online appointment using webinars, that's where you're more likely to have their attention and get their attention and keep their attention long enough to create a long and lasting impression. That's why webinars still work very well today. Okay, now, however, a few things to be aware of. You see, there's two different approaches to running webinars, and I'm going to describe these two, and I'm going to explain the one that I personally recommend. Now, there's the infomercial style webinars, which have become very, very popular. They're recommended. You see, webinars have been around for a while. They're not a new thing, but they have become very popular over the last 5 years, and they've become very popular because webinars, really, because you can keep people's attention, you really get really amazing conversions, which is people actually taking action having attended a webinar with you. Conversions from webinars can be absolutely brilliant. Now, what some people have then decided to do is they have decided to use webinars as a sort of infomercial. Now, what is an infomercial? Infomercials are, you probably see them on television, late at night on certain channels, where you have this 30-minute program where supposedly they're teaching you how to get fit, but they don't really teach you anything. If you really sit and watch through, they don't really teach you anything. What they're really looking to do is get you to buy their fitness kit and their fitness equipment, right? So there's a lot of sizzle, and they just show you stuff to get you excited, to get you wanting whatever it is they're offering, and then they give you an incentive to take action. Now, a lot of the webinars, a lot of gurus, not everybody, but some gurus, I won't say any names, right? So it's not gossip, right? But some big name gurus have recommended that you use what I call the infomercial sizzle approach to webinars, which is don't teach, they say. Because when you teach during your webinars, it will hurt conversions. So instead, use a sizzle approach, get people pumped up, get people excited, create desire, and at the end, then get them to buy your stuff. Now, I'm going to be very upfront with you, right? I have tested using the sizzle approach against using the substance approach. Now, what do I mean by substance? The substance approach means you treat the webinar like people have paid to attend this class with you. So the sizzle approach is with a sizzle approach, you kind of let them know what this is about, let them know what they're doing wrong, but you don't really give them any substance. In a sense, it's almost impossible to leave a webinar, what I call an infomercial style webinar, leave that webinar with anything you can go and execute to make a difference in your life, right? But what they're very good at is compelling you to buy something at the end of the webinar. Now, the approach that I'm recommending is not the sizzle approach, it's the educational. Rather than the infomercial webinar, it's an educational webinar. So instead of sizzle, it's substance. So what I recommend is you treat the webinar like people have spent a certain amount of money to attend and you want to give them their money's worth. Now, that's my recommendation. Now, as a matter of fact, if you are looking to sell something at the end of your webinar, and this is a fact because I've tested it, a sizzle webinar will generate higher sales than a substance webinar. An infomercial style webinar will get higher conversions than an educational webinar. Fact. But an infomercial webinar will also, will create a higher level of resentment than an educational webinar. You're more likely to get people recommending and promoting your webinar and your stuff if it's an educational type webinar rather than an infomercial type webinar. And like I said, I was going to make some contrarian recommendations. And my recommendation is, yes, you may lose on initial conversions from that one webinar if you're just looking at how many sales did I get from this one webinar. But what you will get long-term from the goodwill you generate from the people who show up and get immense value from coming to your webinar is worth a lot more than those one-off sales. Because you with an infomercial type webinar, you get it. Then what would happen is the next time you host it, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's just trying to sell something. They won't show up. The reason why people keep coming back to my webinars is because they know they're going to get immense value. And the reality is, if they don't buy the first time, they're still going to buy. It just is the way it works. So I just wanted to lay that foundation. So to help you understand, this is what I recommend. I hope this makes sense to you. If it makes sense, let me know in the comment section that what I said makes sense before we drive really deep. We're going to be going really deep now as we go into this module. Okay, awesome. Now, so Facebook group profits. Now, I'm going to be helping you understand, how to use webinars within your Facebook groups. Now, there's a lot of coaches, consultants, business owners who are looking to use Facebook groups to create community. And that's brilliant. There's nothing like having a community of people around a common theme where you are the chief of the tribe or the chief helper of the community that you're building. It's absolutely amazing where you have a community where they converge in Facebook, where people are talking to one another, having conversations, asking for help, giving help, and you're showing up as well, supporting and helping people, creating an environment for conversations where people are learning, laughing, supporting, and all that going on within your community. And Facebook groups have created, are a brilliant way for you to be able to create community. Now, the challenge is when you try to commercialize your Facebook groups. Why? Because when you try to commercialize your Facebook groups, commercialization will hurt the community. What do I mean by commercialize? When you're consistently pitching and, trying to sell stuff in your group, it's just the way people are. I'm being sold to, and when they realize it's more of a commercial thing, then people just start voting with their feet. It's just the way it tends to happen. So that was the reason why when we started our group, I made a decision that we weren't going to be pitching. We weren't going to pitch, at least for the first 90 days. We didn't sell anything at all. Not once did we make any offers within the Facebook group. So how is it that within the first few weeks I was able to quickly generate over £5,000 and then scale it and grow it, where within a few months we're able to hit £10,000? And the secret really was webinars. And my advice is don't promote in your group at all, except the occasional one-off launches, and I'll be explaining that, in other modules, right? But don't promote in your group at all. Don't promote. That's my advice. Let it be a community. Don't promote in your group, except the occasional one-off launches that you run. Okay, all right. So every once in a while you can promote, but don't promote in your group. Keep it communal, right, rather than commercial. Now, so ideally, what you should be doing is promote outside the group, so via email, via social media. Now, when I say social media, you can run ads, from your Facebook page. You can run promotions. You can run promotions via email. There's other ways you can do that, but within the group, keep it communal. Let it be about engagement and support and conversations and all of that. Every once in a while, when you're launching something, you can promote in the group. But apart from that, don't let it be, where, don't pitch too much in your group. Now, but webinars are an absolutely brilliant way for you to monetize your Facebook groups. Now, there's primarily two types of webinars that I use, and I'm going to really explain these and I'm going to break them down. The first type of webinar is what I call the new members welcome webinar. It's a welcome webinar. It's just a webinar that is run for people who will join your community, right? Now, so what is the purpose of this webinar? So, because as you know, with Facebook groups, whether, people are invited by their friends or Facebook recommends your group, people find your group and they come in to join, right? So the whole idea is when people join your Facebook group, right, they're invited to an online class, right? They're invited to attend an online class or an online training as a new member of the community. It's almost like an introductory class to new members of the community. So the purpose, what is the purpose? Number one, it's to introduce yourself and your community to the new members. So it's introduce yourself, introduce your community, introduce the solutions that you provide to your new community members. That's the first purpose. The second purpose is to build your email list, right? Because when people join your group, it still is Facebook. When they join your email list, then it's outside of Facebook's property. Okay, so when they register for your webinar, they now join your list. Okay, so you're building up an asset, which is an email list. Okay, and then number three is to generate clients consistently. So by having this welcome webinar in place, you're able to introduce your group, introduce yourself, and introduce your expertise to new members. You're also able to grow your email list consistently. You're also able to enroll clients consistently. Okay, good. So what do you need? And these are the things I'm going to recommend that you will need. Number one, you will need a live webinar system. There's quite a number out there, right? There's quite a number of good webinar systems. Most of them aren't good, but there's about, off the top of my head, if you ask me to recommend 3 webinar systems, I would say GoToWebinar, I would say Zoom Webinars, and Webinar Jam. That's the one I use. That's the one I recommend above everything else. So if you've got Zoom Webinars, that's fine. If you've got GoToWebinar, that's fine. But if you are asking me which would I recommend, it's Webinar Jam. So if you go to profitfromcoaching.com/webinar jam, you can get a 60-day trial for $1, and I'd recommend that. So it's profitfromcoaching.com/webinar jam, right? Good. So you need a live webinar system for this. You would also need an automated webinar system. Now, what is an automated webinar system? An automated webinar system is a webinar system that it's set up like a live webinar, but you don't people would register. It's scheduled for an appointed time, but you don't need to be there live to do it. So it would be a webinar you recorded in the past, and then they show up and they attend like it's live. And like I said, people stay on average for 54 minutes of my live webinars. And so by having an automated webinar, people are more likely to stay and watch all the way through. Now, it's better to have an automated webinar than to use a webinar replay. So rather than say, hey, I hosted a webinar a year ago, go here and watch the replay. I did share with you that the average that people stayed on a webinar replay was 8 minutes, right? The average on a live webinar was 54 minutes. So that's why I recommend an automated webinar system. Now, which do I use? There's only one I recommend, and that's EverWebinar. EverWebinar. So if you go to profitfromcoaching.com/EverWebinar, you can get that for, again, $1 for 60 days, a 60-day trial for $1. So you get EverWebinar, you get Webinar Jam. They're both from the same company, which is really brilliant, because what you do is you create the webinar in Webinar Jam, and you then switch it over to EverWebinar, and it's set up there. So you need those two. You also need an online calendar system. So things like Calendly, so where people can book appointments. I recommend Acuity scheduling. That's what I use. I use Acuity, absolutely love it. But if you have something that you use that works, that's brilliant. And then obviously you need to have a prepared webinar, which could be talking head like this, or it could be slides. Don't feel compelled to use slides, okay? But if you're able to create your slides, that's great, okay? If you're good at slides, I mean, I've seen some people use slides, and to be honest with you, they would have been better off just using talking head, because it's just, if you're not good at creating really brilliant slides. So this is a secret. Make sure they're not so text heavy, right? That if there's too much text on there, then you're not using them properly. Bullet points, images, those are good slides. Loads and loads and loads of text, that's not good. So, just play safe if you're not sure about slides, and just use talking head, right? And again, maybe you're thinking, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure I want people to see my face and all of that. You can just have one image, right? One slide image, and that's all. So you don't even need to they don't need to see your head, but maybe just an image with the title of the webinar, and that's all they see. So it's almost like it's an audio webinar. So it could just be a picture of you, the title of the webinar, and that's it. And then, so if you're not comfortable using talking head, you can do that instead. Okay, so that's just a tip there. All right, brilliant. Now, so you've got to prepare your webinar. And like I said, in the Winning Webinar framework, I break down how to design and how to deliver an effective webinar, and I'll let you know how you can get that free later on before we're done. Okay. Now, what do I recommend for your welcome webinar? What should you teach? Right? For this welcome webinar, my recommendation, hey, Padevi, how are you doing? My recommendation is you teach your unique success framework. Now, that's what I recommend for this, welcoming new people to your group. So whatever your communities, the theme it's built around, right? That big theme, let the webinar be about the core of your unique success framework. So for example, if you are in building a community and your business is around helping mothers get rid of stubborn baby fat and getting back to full fitness, then the webinar could be how to get rid of stubborn baby fat and hit full fitness within 90 days. It's just that big title, that big thing that, you solve for your community. So for example, the webinar that we used to welcome people was the formula for building a coaching business, for building a full-time coaching business, right? And that was, something like that. I can't remember, but the formula for building a full-time coaching business that changes lives and pays you well, right? And what did I teach? I taught my unique success framework, which was, number one, define your community. Number two, grow your community. Number 3, serve your community. Number 4, upgrade your community. And that was pretty much what I taught during my introductory webinar. So if you're thinking, what do I teach? It's that big overarching problem that you solve for your community, and then just introduce them to your unique success framework. All right. So that's what I recommend would be the content of your big welcome webinar for new members of your community. Right. So now that we've done that, so now that we know what we need, so you've got your live webinar system set up, you've got your automated webinar system, you've got your online calendar, you've prepared your webinar, and one thing which is optional is to have a tripwire offer. Now, if you're thinking you need to eliminate time wasters, or you want to put another hurdle in front of people, you can have a tripwire offer. What do I mean by that? Something that's not hugely expensive, really low priced, but it would just eliminate freebie seekers. If you're worried that you may be attracting too many freebie speakers, then you could just have a tripwire offer. So just look for maybe a book that you've written, right? Or maybe a video that you've recorded, a video training you've recorded, just anything you've done that is great value, that is aligned with what you're going to be teaching. That, it's a book, it's an audio, it's a video I did, it's an audio program I created, that you can give away for $10 or less, something like that. Just something which is really low cost, right? That you can offer as a tripwire if you want to eliminate time wasters. Okay, so that are freebie seekers. If you're thinking I'm likely to attract a lot of freebie seekers, people who are not yet ready to spend money, then just put a little tripwire, just a low priced article, have something like that, which you will recommend that people get at the end of your webinar. Really low price, right? So it's in a sense, they don't need to think about it before they bring out their credit cards. That's the whole idea. Okay, good. Now, so you set up so this is now the process for your welcome webinar. Number 1, when you're doing it for the first time. So I want to create my welcome webinar. The first thing you do is you set up the webinar using Webinar Jam, like I recommend, or any other tool you use, right? And then you go to your group and you create an event in the group. Now, in Facebook, I believe it's up to maybe 300 or 500, I'm not sure precisely, up to about 300 or maybe 500 members. If you don't have more than 500 members, when you create an event, you can invite every member of the group. I think it's 500, but forgive me if I'm wrong, okay? Because it's been a while, okay? But up to about 500 members, when you create an event for your group, you can invite every single member of your group to that event. So you set up the webinar and then you create an event around that webinar in your group and you invite everybody. It's that big overarching topic, the how-to big thing, right? How to get this big thing that everybody who's coming here will want, okay? So you create an event and you invite everybody in the group. If you already have more than 500 people, you can only invite your friends in the group. Okay, so just so you're aware of that. Okay, now the beautiful thing about an online class, because people are coming to learn something and you are the owner of the group, when you promote that event within your group, it will not create an animosity. People are excited because you're inviting them to kind of learn something really amazing. So in your group, record short videos where you talk about what people are going to learn. You begin to build up to it, you know, create some excitement and energy around that particular online class. Okay, then what you do is you run the webinar. So you've promoted the online class or the webinar to the group. You then run the webinar, right? You run the webinar. And once you've now run the webinar, so what you do is you run the webinar, and at the end of the webinar, you make an invitation. The invitation could be, hey, having taught this, if you need me to help you with whatever it is that people who are watching the webinar want, then go ahead and book an appointment to have a free 30-minute consultation with me, and we will discuss whatever it is that you're looking at and how to help you get what you want. And that's it, really. And so at the end, you invite them to book an appointment. Now, if you're concerned, like I said, that you will be attracting a lot of freebie seekers, then invite them to get the tripwire and say, hey, you know what? Go ahead and get this book. It's this book called whatever the title of your book is, or this video training called whatever the title of your video training is, or this audio training, whatever the title of your audio training is. Go ahead and get it. And for everybody who gets it, I mean, if when you do get it, I would also give you 30 minutes of my time, which is worth whatever it is, to really just help you identify what it is you need to do to move forward in the areas that you help people with. So you can put that tripwire in there to eliminate freebie seekers, or if you know that I'm attracting quality people anyways, then you could just have them book an appointment straight away. So I started off having people book an appointment straight away. Then as my group began to grow, I had to go and do another webinar where I had people to actually again, as it grows, I had them to pay £27 for a free a discounted consultation with me. But I started off doing them free, okay? Because I wanted to maximize the numbers and I had the time. But if you think I don't have the time, then just have it discounted and then you would just do it that way. So I hope that works. So now that you've done this, right, the next step is you now take that webinar that you have run and you set it up as an evergreen automated webinar. Okay, so you've run the webinar live. You now set it up as an evergreen automated webinar. Okay, so now that you've done that, okay, so what you now do, and this is where you bring some automation into it. This is where you now start having some regular appointments being booked with you, is when you're doing your new member welcomes into your group. When you're doing your new member welcome into your group, you would say, hello, number one, read the rules so you understand the rules. Number two, say hello to others in the group, Number three, make sure you attend this free online training titled You will learn whatever it is they're going to learn, and you will be able to accelerate your progress towards achieving the big thing that they want to achieve. So you put that into the welcome message. So basically, everybody who comes into your group as a new member will get that notification. Right? Now, let's just look at some numbers very, very quickly so you can understand why this is really exciting. Now, let's assume that, for every 100 people who join your community, who join your Facebook group, let's say 50% of them actually register. Okay, so 50% of them register for the webinar, right? So of every 100, 50 register. So you get 50 people who actually register. Now, let's say of the 50 who register, 50% attend. So that means you end up getting 25 people who actually attend out of every 100 who join your list. So straight away, you will have 50 people who've joined your list, 25 people who've attended your webinar. And let's say of the 25 people who attended your webinar, let's say you got them to book an appointment straight away. Let's say 12 of them booked an appointment. So you had 100 people join your group, right? 100 people have joined your group. You've got 12 calendar appointments, discovery sessions. Now, if you've got the book Discovery Called Magic and you've gone through it, which I'd recommend you do, by the way, it's a brilliant book, and not just because I wrote it, because it is, right? Now, so you now have 12 appointments. And so hypothetically, right, and these are some of the numbers I'm just going to be looking at, and I'm basing this on the sort of numbers that I get, right? So of these 12 appointments, let's say 2 of them buy your higher priced $3,000 product, okay? So of the 12 people who actually booked an appointment, 2 of them buy your higher priced $3,000 product, that's $6,000. Let's say 4 of them buy your $300 product. So maybe you have a $300 online course. 4 of them buy that, all right? That would be $1,200. And let's say 4 of them buy your cheaper, maybe an online audio program, $100 audio program. That's $400. That's $7,600 that you would generate off of this automated webinar. So if you had 100 people join your community or your group within that month, right, you could generate $7,600 just looking at those numbers. Now, obviously, for some people, it will be much lower. For some people, it may be much more than this, but I just wanted you to really understand those numbers. And you can see how when people are coming into your community, you're saying, hey, how you doing? You're welcoming them. Other people in the community are welcoming them. They're going in and they're watching that webinar. They're getting that experience of being there with you as they're experiencing your value. And so the key thing is when they're booking a discovery call with you, it's not random. There's a perception of your brilliance and of your expertise when they're booking an appointment with you. So you're generating a quality prospect for a discovery call just by welcoming new members into your group, which basically means you're making money, right? So there, just by your welcome message alone, by setting this up, using this initial webinar, which is now an automated webinar, as people are coming into your group, you're consistently welcoming them. Your calendar is being booked and you're enrolling people into your programs. You're basically making money. And yet you didn't do any pitching in the group, nothing like that, just by welcoming new members into your community. Is this making sense? Are you getting great value out of this? Please let me know in the comment section below. I need to hear back from you guys, okay? So let me know that. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is equally as important, if not even more important, and that is regular webinars. Now, regular webinars, what are these? Now, regular webinars are webinars or online classes that you run regularly from your community members. That's really it. So basically, you just run these online classes or run these webinars regularly. Now, how regularly, it's up to you, but I'll give you my recommendation of how you should do this. I would really give you my recommendation of how you should do this. But what is the purpose? All right, first of all, before I give you my recommendations, the purpose, number one, is to be able to promote within your community without killing community in your Facebook group. You see, promoting online classes or webinars where people are coming to learn amazing stuff for you that they want from the chief of the community, the chief helper of the community, will never hurt engagement within it won't. It won't. As long as there's engagement within your community and you make these promotions, it will not hurt engagement at all. Okay, so promoting, rather than promoting a product to sell, by promoting an online class and the value they're going to get out of it, and it's free for members of this community, right? There's great value, and people are not going to get irritated. It will not hurt engagement. It will not hurt community. So number one is to promote. It's to be able to promote without killing community. Number two, to solidify your authority, credibility, and likability within your community. By running these regular online classes where you are delivering immense value, you're enhancing them in a powerful way, it really helps to establish and to enhance your credibility, your authority, and your likability within your community. In a sense, it builds up your perceived value, which means that over time, your community members are going to be more willing and more likely to spend big money with you, because with time, you're building up perceived value with your community, which means they're looking at you within the space that you work as the expert, as the guru, as the go-to person that they literally convince themselves that you're worth investing in, right? And so you find it easier and easier to get people to buy your middle ticket and higher ticket products at whatever prices you're setting because of these webinars. They really make a big difference because they establish credibility, authority, and likability. Another crucial thing is you also use them to grow your list, because every time you're running this, you can promote it within your group. And those people who may not have attended your initial welcome webinar basically have the opportunity to attend any of these other regular webinars, which means that they would be added to your email list, which is awesome. Again, you're able to generate new buyers, right, which is awesome. But another big one, which is also very important, is you're able to create new content. So things like lead magnets. I mean, I have literally just taken a webinar and I've converted it into a lead magnet and use it to build, I mean, the video recording of a webinar, just taking the video recording of a webinar, and sometimes I just take out a snippet of it, a snippet of the webinar, and I've used it as a lead magnet. Okay, so you can use it as a lead magnet, which is absolutely brilliant. You can use it as a tripwire. So you just take that webinar recording and you just put it out there as a tripwire, a low price $7, $10 product in order to trigger new buyers. And that's another thing you can use it for. You can also, get it transcribed, and you can use it as a blog post. And also I like the short video clips. So I get a webinar, just pull out, a 2-minute segment. Notice I'm saying 2 minutes, right? Because I know few people watch beyond 2 minutes anyways. Just get a 2-minute segment of a webinar, and I could repurpose that, use it on Facebook to be able to generate, new viewers and things like that. So there's lots of different ways you can create new content off of your regular webinars. Now, let's go into how regularly should you run them. So how regularly? This is my recommendation. First of all, before I talk about how regularly, I am going to talk about something which is important. Make a decision, that you determine how much each class is going to be worth to the people that attend. So let me tell you the decision that I made when we started Profit from Coaching. I said to myself that I'm going to treat each class like people have paid $100 to attend, and they must get their money's worth. So I treat each class, so just like this class right now, I treat it like every single person who is here, even though this is, has paid $100 to attend this class. And I want to make sure they get so much value out of it that they're not going to ask for their money back. That's the mindset I go in with when I'm setting up these webinars. And I encourage you to attach a monetary value to your webinars as well. I encourage you to. It will make a big difference. Now, okay, good. So in starting this, in the beginning, if you haven't been doing this yet, I encourage for the first 13 weeks, to do it weekly. Yeah. Why? Because you want to create momentum and you want to establish your authority, and you want to get people into this mode of showing up, being taught by you. All right. So 13 weeks, that's 3 months, 90 days, so 90 days every week. So that's 13 sessions. Now, what I would recommend, all right, is your unique success framework. How many parts is it? Now, here at Profit from Coaching, it's a 4-part framework. For some people, it might be more. It could be as many as 7. Stephen Covey's was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? So let's say I was Stephen Covey, right? And I had a 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, my very first webinar of those 13 would be the one that would become my welcome webinar. So that's where I would introduce the whole 7-part system. Right? That's what I would do. So my first webinar would be how to be productive in life, business, and whatever. And I would just introduce the whole 7-part framework, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's my first webinar. And that's the one I'm going to set up as my welcome webinar, set it up as automated. Now for webinars 2 to 8, so webinar 2 would be where I would take one of those habits. So maybe put first things first would be what I would really expand on, putting first things first, and that would be webinar number 2. Now, webinar number 3 would be, seek first to understand and then be understood, which is another one of the habits. And that would be, I would expand on seek first to understand and then be understood. Now, as far as titles are concerned, you want to give your webinar a compelling title. So seek first to understand and then be understood may not be the right title, but it would be something along the lines of how to get something that people want, that understanding that particular principle will help them get. And that's how I title my webinars. Now, in the Winning Webinar Framework, I break that down for you. And like I said, very, very soon I'll let you know how you can get that free. Okay, good. So then I would do that for up to week 8 would be those 7 habits plus the introduction. That's 8. So I've now got 5 to go. So what would the other 5 be? The other 5 would just be 5 big topics that I know that the people who are members of my community are, attach a lot of importance to. They're a big deal to them. So for example, when I was doing my first few webinars with the PFC community, I did things like how to create a content calendar. I did things like how to quit your job in a certain amount of time, kind of things that I knew that the people who are members of my community would absolutely love. And that's what I set up for my first 13 webinars. Those first 13 webinars have got to be super amazingly brilliant. Okay, right now, then after that, I recommend doing it twice a month. Now, what do I cover for all this forever, twice a month? What on earth am I going to be talking about? I'll give you a very simple answer. Your community will tell you. That's all, right? As you engage within your community, as you engage and with everything that's happening, just be on the lookout and listen. So people are going to be saying, well, how do we do this? I'm not really sure about this. And as you're getting all these questions, these are just titles for your online classes. That's exactly what I do. Right? Oh, I'm not really sure about this. I've been struggling with this and I'm very frustrated. And you see people complaining about stuff in the group, that becomes a title of an online class you're going to run. So, and sometimes when I see that something's imminent, that becomes a priority. So for example, with the GDPR, that would be very, going on right now, that's the sort of thing that we would be looking to run as an online class, because I know it's a big thing right now. Okay, so these are the ways you would determine you will never run out of content. As long as there's engagement within your community, you will not run out of content. I promise you that. Now, so in this situation, what do you need? You need a live webinar system. So you definitely need a live webinar system. Now, again, Webinar Jams, what I recommend, get the $1 trial at profitfromcoaching.com/webinar jam. You can get the $1 trial for 60 days and use it. All right. So you also want your calendar scheduler. Okay. And then you prepare your webinar, talking heads or slides. Now, really think about this, right? I tend to use talking heads a great deal, but I also use slides when I have the time to create them, right? But again, I gave you, if you're someone who maybe doesn't really have the time to create slides, you don't feel comfortable using talking heads, just create one slide with your picture and the title. Just look at me on the screen right now and just imagine there's a picture of me like this. Okay, I don't like that angle, but you get the idea. And basically in the orange section is the title of the webinar. And that's pretty much cool. So the title of the webinar, your name, and your picture. And you could literally just have that image on the screen while you talk. And as long as you're sharing value, it would be okay. I promise you. Don't overkill it. Don't overwork it, right? If you do have the time and the ability to create great slides, great. If you don't beat yourself up. Use talking head. You're not comfortable using talking head, use a one slide image, and that will be fine. Okay, so that's that. Now, again, I've talked about creating the event in your group. It's pretty much the same thing. The only difference here is that you're doing this regularly. For the first 13 weeks, you're doing it weekly. And after that, it's twice a month. So twice a month, you're setting up these webinars and you're promoting them. So basically, every time you have a new webinar, you can promote them in your group. And people are not going to get pissed off and upset because they're getting great. There's great community, and you're inviting them to come and learn from you, the chief of the tribe. Now, what I suggest, right, is when you run these webinars, you can consistently, basically the same pitch at the end of each webinar. And the same pitch would be, again, either the tripwire for them to book an appointment with you, right? Or if you don't want to use a tripwire, just have them book a 30-minute appointment with you. It's really up to you. I would suggest start with having them book an appointment, and as it begins to build up, then as your community begins to grow, then start introducing a tripwire to eliminate time wasters and eliminate freebie seekers. That would be my advice. right? So you're consistently putting that offer out there so people are booking appointments, which is just great because that way you're able to monetize, without doing any hard sell and things like that. Right now, one thing I will suggest is doing immediately after the webinar, go to your group and do a biggest lesson post, right? What's a biggest lesson post? It would be an image saying what was the biggest lesson you got from the online training, whatever the name is. Post it in the group and tell the people who attended the webinar, right, to go into the group and go and talk about the biggest lesson they're taking away from that online class. That's really critical because it helps with engagement, right? It helps them to solidify what they've learned. But for those who didn't show up, right, they're realizing, wow, people learned some amazing stuff from the webinars that are run in this group. I better be showing up for them, right? So it really helps them. It helps you because it's good to read what people learn from showing up for your events. It's good for them to really solidify by writing out what they've learned by attending a class that you've run. But also for those who didn't attend, they're seeing other people talking about this amazing class and everything they've learned, and they're thinking, I better be there for the next one. Which brings me to the big question about replays. Should there be replays? My advice, no replays. That was the mistake that I made, and this is from experience. Because I like to help people and I really wanted people to get immense value from my group, I was offering replays to my online classes. But what I didn't know was I was teaching my people not to attend my online classes. And eventually the numbers started going down considerably because people knew I can get the replay. But guess what? The people who showed up live stayed for 54 minutes. Those who attended the replay stayed for 8 minutes. So I quickly learned a lesson. By offering them the replays, I'm giving them a reason not to show up. And when they don't show up, they don't follow through. So I would say don't offer replays, right? However, in the beginning, you may offer replays just to get people into it before you then say we're no longer offering replays in the beginning for the first 3 or 4 webinars, right? But make sure they're limited availability. What do I mean by that? It expires after 48 hours. It's no longer available. So if you are going to offer replays for the first few, make sure it's limited availability. But after that, no longer offer replays. So basically, if you don't show up, you miss out. Okay, so let there be a reward for showing up. Don't reward people for not showing up. That's one big lesson that I learned, from running regular webinars. Now, so key thing is quality teaching. Make sure the teaching is quality. Treat it like people have invested money to come. And then if you need help, book an appointment and then also promote the next class. So during that class, promote the next one you're going to be running. It's really critical. So if you do this, right, you're going to keep the momentum. You're going to build up the momentum within the group, and you're going to get more people engaging with your webinars. Okay, now, so there we are with a new member or introductory webinars, and then with the regular webinars that you run within your group. Okay, so that's how to make it work. Now, how can you repurpose your recordings? Okay, how can you repurpose your recordings for content and profit? And I'll just run through this very quickly. Number one of my favorite ways is you do a series. So you do a series like I'm doing right now, right? You do a series, right? And then you take that series and you package it as a training product that you can sell on its own. So for example, the winning webinar framework that I mentioned earlier on, that I said I'm going to let you know how you can access it free. The winning webinar framework that I'm going to let you know how you can get for free in a moment, was a webinar series I ran 2 years ago, right? And I ran this 2 years ago, and I really broke down how to choose a title for a webinar that's compelling, how to design a webinar registration page that compels people to register, right? How to engage with people who've registered so they show up for the webinar and how to design a highly engaging webinar that keeps people staying through to the end, and then how to run the webinars. And, so all that, each one of them I ran weekly. And afterwards, I packaged them as an online course, and I've sold a lot of them since then, right? And so you can take a series, run a series of webinars, add value to your community. Remember, it's only those who show up live who get it. So those who don't show up never get it. And even if you show up, they're going to want to get it again and again. So you can repackage it as an online course and make available to your community. So that's one great way to repurpose your webinar recordings. Another one is to literally just transcribe them, and you can create articles, you can create blog posts, you can create social media quotes as well. So that's another thing, is you just pull out some social media quotes. So you have someone who might work with you as a virtual assistant who listens through the webinars. They're transcribed, that you can do blog posts, you can pull out quotes, which could be brilliant social media graphic quotes, lots of different ways you can repurpose the content of your webinars. And then another one, which is really brilliant, right, is take the recordings, because over time, you're building up an asset, right? You building up a truckload of really amazing content. So for example, the Profit from Coaching, we have a ton of webinars that we've run. And so you can take these webinar recordings, upload them into an online vault, right? Upload them into an online vault. So here you have high value content, which with time gets even more valuable. So if you're doing them, your first few are weekly. So in the first 90 days, you create 13. If you then do it twice a month, within a year, you will have 31 pieces of brilliant content, videos and topics, which really are transformational for the people who you help. So you can put them in the vault, and you can then sell as a continuity program. What do I mean by that? A subscription program, right? So you can resell as a subscription program. So maybe, for example, $100 a month, right? So a person joins, right? They pay $100 every month, and they have access to all of this training that you've built up over time, right? And the beautiful thing is, with time, as it builds up, you're putting in more, it's becoming more valuable. And for just $100 a month, they have access to all, have to be 100, it could be less, it could be more. But you get the whole idea, is you build this up with time. And it's, this is something that we should have done much earlier with Profit from Coaching, which we're doing right now, right? And so it just means that, the content in there, if a person's a member of this paid community, they can just log in, they have access, they can pick a topic which is relevant for them, they can work through it, implement it, and begin to get really great results. And so, for example, just imagine money-wise, if you have, a subscription program like this, $100 a month, you have 100 people who are members, and you've built this up over time. That's 100 times 100, that's $10,000, a month you're generating from the content in your vault, from what you have built up by building and adding value within your Facebook group and monetizing it as well. So you can see it really is brilliant, and there's just so much you can do here.